teach a reforming criminal justice class, although I don't really teach it. I put together readings and make assignments and occasionally give feedback, but mostly I try to stay out of the way because the men in prison that we work with are the real teachers. So this is a class that's half limit students, half prisoners. And what we've brought to you today is the culmination of a lot of that work. And what the men inside have taught me is that the way we handle poverty, mental illness, childhood trauma, and addiction in this country perpetuates a cycle of hurt and shame that benefits no one. They've taught me that redemption and transformation is possible for those who hurt and those who have hurt others, because as humans, we contain multitudes. We're not the worst thing we ever did. And they have taught me that in the face of an overwhelming system that has a myriad number of problems, we cannot despair. We have to have vision, and we have to act. We have to do what we can. And if we all do what we can, it will be enough. I really believe that. So I'm glad to see you all here. So this afternoon, we're going to start off with Mia Noren, who will give us some vision by talking about the Oregon-Norway project. And this work is part of the senior thesis she did for the politics major. And while she found that there are many reasons that Oregon can't be Norway, we can learn some important lessons from the Norway example. Then I'm happy to welcome Brandon Krastowski here today. If you've not seen the documentary Knife Skills, I really encourage you to do that. The film documents the opening of Edwin's premier French restaurant and reentry training program for formerly incarcerated men and women. I have only spent about half a day with Brandon, but I can tell you two important things about him that are not on his bio. One, he has an incredibly passionate heart, and two, he is very intense. Yeah. And he has a vision for how to do reentry work that is inclusive and comprehensive and provides dignity to those who are desperate for a second chance. So I'm happy that he came all this way to talk to us about that. And after Brandon's talk and a short Q&A with him, we'll break into discussion groups on the 6 reform topics that we've been working on this semester. I know that there is tremendous expertise and energy in this room, and my students and I bring you some ideas from the work that they've been doing with the prisoners at OSP. And they benefit from the insight of people who are living with the policies and realities of our current system. And then to wrap us all up in conclusion, we'll have Trevor Walraven, who will close us out with some thoughts about how to advance the cause of transformative justice. So again, welcome to all of you, and we'll start with Mia. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Ish. Hello everyone, my name is Mia Noren, and I will be presenting on Norwegian exceptionalism and ultimately asking the question, can Oregon model a less punitive penal system? So why is Norway so exceptional? Norway has been hailed as having one of the most humane prison systems in the entire world. And additionally, they have the lowest recidivism rate out of any criminal justice system at 20%. In both 2017 and 2018, Oregon Department of Corrections officers, officials, and Oregon lawmakers traveled to Norway to tour their prison system and see what they could bring back to here in Oregon. In terms of population size, both Norway and Oregon are fairly comparable. Oregon only has about 1 million less people than Norway does. However, their prison populations are not comparable. Oregon has almost 15,000 inmates, whereas Norway has almost 4,000, showing an obvious need for reform and room for growth. I've worked at the Oregon State Capitol for the last 4 years, and I've heard a lot about these trips to Norway, which ultimately prompted me to ask, can Oregon pursue reforms inspired by Norway, which work to reduce the recidivism rate? Throughout my research, I identified three main proposals that I believe are possible to implement here in Oregon. The first is looking at the officer to adult in custody relationship. The second is the education and work programs that are available to those incarcerated. And the third is sentencing reform. So the first reform that I identified is looking at the officer to adult in custody relationship. Prior to the 1970s, Norway actually had a recidivism rate of between 60 and 70%. They also had high rates of violence, crime, and drug use within their prisons, and they knew that something had to change. And so they began to rethink the officer position, to rethink of it as more of a social work position rather than being a guard. In 2012, they completely professionalized the position and created a 2-year staffing academy from which a student can earn a degree in becoming an officer. And as you can see, many of these courses are in subjects such as correctional education, law, ethics, professionalism, human rights courses. Ultimately, Norway found that by professionalizing the position, they were able to reduce the stigma of becoming an officer and create a highly competitive and much desired position within Norwegian society. On average, they receive about 1,200 applications a year, 500 of which are actually accepted into the academy, and ultimately 200 job offers are extended. In this way, they're able to ensure that only those who truly want to work to rehabilitate inmates are actually entering that prison space. Unfortunately, here in Oregon, Oregon is not able to offer the same amount of training to officers that Norway does. Officer training in Oregon is comprised of 200 hours of training, and an additional 16 hours are required each year. However, these courses are mainly focused on putting safety first and teach subjects such as uses of force and defensive tactics, ultimately not providing officers with the tools that they need to de-escalate situations and ultimately reduce violence within prisons. And it shows. Not only are prison spaces unsafe and unhealthy for those who are incarcerated, but for officers as well. Due to the sheer size of Oregon's prisons, officers are not able to provide the same level of attention that Norway is to those who are incarcerated. Norway has a 1-to-1 officer to incarcerated person ratio, whereas the ratio here in Oregon is 8-to-1. In 2012, Portland State University and Oregon Health Authority conducted 2 studies of Oregon's officers and ultimately found that 50% of officers show signs of depression, 1 in 3 show signs of PTSD, and the average lifespan of an officer here in Oregon is 57 years. Additionally, there are high rates of domestic violence and suicide, and obviously something is not working. We need to provide officers with the training and tools that they need to de-escalate situations, ultimately improving that officer to incarcerated person relationship. However, there is hope, and within the next 3 years, 50% of the officer population is set to retire. This provides an incredible opportunity for DOC to expand trainings and create stricter guidelines for officers. DOC has already requested an additional $2 million for the 2021-2023 biennium, which would go directly towards expanding officer trainings. The next reform that I identified is looking at the work and education programs that are available for adults in custody. There are 3 main acts that have passed in Norway since the late 1960s, which have ultimately worked to provide a comprehensive education and work program for those who are incarcerated. In 1969, the import model was created, which allowed community members to enter into prison to provide educational courses and work programs, ultimately bridging the inside and outside communities and allowing for a major expansion of these programs. In 1998, the Education Act passed, which provided funding for all secondary degrees for Norwegian citizens. And if that was completed, funding was available from the government for a post-secondary degree or vocational trainings. And this applied equally to those who are incarcerated. In 2002, the Enforcement of Sentences Act passed, which holds all inmates to the same standard as Norwegian citizens. However, they are also provided with the same quality of services that those who are not incarcerated have access to. In terms of work programs, Norway has created the Prison Association model, which mandates that all inmates must spend at least 8 hours a day, 7 days a week outside of their cells, spending time in education, work programs, activities, rehabilitation programs, the list goes on. Ultimately, this has forced Norway to create comprehensive education and work programs that are available to those who are incarcerated. Many of these work programs are in areas such as building and construction, hotel trades, food production, ultimately highly technical and transferable skills that equip those who are incarcerated with the skills that they need to find employment and ultimately be successful upon release. Here in Oregon in 1994, ballot measure 17 passed, also known as the Prison Reform and Inmate Work Act. This mandates that those eligible inmates must spend at least 40 hours a week working. However, 20 of those hours can be spent on educational courses. The motivation behind this ballot measure was to ultimately force inmates to work and provide money for the economy rather than solely spending tax-paying dollars. This forced DOC to create the Oregon Corrections Enterprises, or OCE. This is a semi-independent state-run agency which is solely funded by its own revenue rather than tax-paying dollars or DOC's budget. The two main industries within OCE are the laundry business and the call centers. However, the laundry center already contracts with many of the major institutions here in Oregon, and there aren't many call centers here in Oregon as well. And so these industries that are provided on the inside are ultimately dying on the outside. And although these industries do provide skills such as personal responsibility, these are not the highly technical and transferable skills that will provide those who are incarcerated with the tools that they need to succeed on the outside and ultimately find employment. Additionally, only 10% of those who are eligible are actually able to be employed within OCE, showing an obvious need of expansion for these programs. Although unfortunately, many of the public and interest groups have found have called these inmate work programs slave labor, ultimately because the most that an inmate can earn in a month is $240, versus in Norway where the inmates are actually paid minimum wage and are then asked to pay rent to the institution. So two different models there. In terms of education, all adults in custody in Oregon must earn a GED. However, beyond that, the opportunities for a higher education degree or vocational trainings are few, slim, and far between. There is the College Inside program, however, and this is where Chemeketa Community College has partnered with OSP to provide a 2-year associate's degree, which can then be put towards a 4-year degree upon release. This program boasts of a 2.5 recidivism rate and an average 3.8 GPA. Those who participate in educational courses inside prison have found that there's a 43% lower odds of recidivating and a 13% higher chance of finding employment upon release. So obviously these education programs are aiding in rehabilitation and actually providing those who are incarcerated with the tools that they need to be successful upon release. However, there needs to be an expansion of these programs, and unfortunately this is funding that DOC says they do not have at this time. The next reform that I identified is sentencing reform. Sentencing in Norway looks much different than it does here in Oregon. In 1901, Norway abolished capital punishment, and in 1981, they provided a minimum cap on sentencing at 21 years, meaning that no one in Norway can be sentenced to prison for more than 21 years at a time. Caps were also placed on all possible crimes, and for instance, no one can serve more than 2 years for a drug charge, no one can serve more than 6 years for robbery and aggravated theft. The average sentence in Norway is 8 months, 60% of those serve less than 3 months, and 90% serve less than a year. Those with good behavior can be released early, and Norway relies heavily on electronic monitoring and probation and reuse incarceration as a last resort. In 1994, ballot measure 11 passed here in Oregon, which created mandatory minimum sentences for capital crimes. The motivation behind this ballot measure was that people thought that by creating lengthy sentences, ultimately people would be deterred from committing crimes. However, there's been no evidence to prove that this is true, and Measure 11 has only served to increase prison overcrowding and unnecessary prison spending. Unfortunately, 90% of Oregonians still support that ballot measure 11, and so obviously a large amount of public education needs to be done, ultimately showing that by reducing the prison population, this is in everyone's interest, which would ultimately reduce the crime rate, recidivism rate, and invest in transformative justice. And I've talked a bit about the budgetary barriers to many of these reforms, and I would like to talk a bit about why. Between 2010 and 2015, Oregon's prison population grew almost 6%. In that time, DOC's budget only increased by 2%. That increase in population cost DOC $508 million. However, during that 5-year time span, DOC's budget only increased by $12 million, showing an obvious gap in necessary funding that DOC needs to provide services for the large amount of adults in custody that they have. In looking at how the budget is delineated, in the 2017 and 2019 biennium budget, the total budget for Oregon was just over $74 billion. However, it is only this portion here, the general fund and lottery fund, which actually go towards funding DOC's budget, as well as many other funds and agencies. Looking at how the general fund and lottery fund are broken up specifically, they go towards funding the education budget, human services, economic development, natural resources, and it's only this portion here which goes towards funding public safety. These are all obviously worthy funds that also desperately need money here in Oregon. In the 2017-2019 biennium budget, almost $4 billion was specifically allocated to public safety. However, this also goes towards funding law enforcement, corrections, military enforcement. Only $168 million went specifically towards funding DOC's 14 state prisons here in the state. In looking at how the budget is broken up, it is understandable why it is difficult for DOC administrators and Oregon lawmakers to argue that more money should be allocated to DOC's budget for those who are incarcerated in order to expand services rather than, say, for instance, the education budget. However, mass incarceration is a human rights crisis that has severely affected Oregon's criminal justice system here. Funding is necessary upfront in order to save money in the long term, and by looking to Norway, who invested in transformative justice and rehabilitation on the front end, they have been able to have one of the lowest recidivism rates in the entire world just within 50 years. By reducing the recidivism rate and ultimately the prison population, the officer to inmate ratio would be able to be improved, and there would be much more spending available for, say, officer trainings and education and work programs. DOC's desperately needs to recenter its criminal justice system on rehabilitation and transformative justice rather than punishment. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And while we're just making this quick transition, I think it's a really important point to highlight that the money is there if we reduce the prison population. And that's where the money can come from.
All right, well, how's everyone doing? Good, super. We got the cheering gallery back here. Did you bring those people with you? They're going to cheer like crazy at the event. Well, thank you for having me here in Oregon. I don't spend much time on college campuses. Usually I'm in and out. I speech and then I go. So this has been the first time I spent a day and a half on a college campus. It's been amazing. It's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different energy, and I don't think I've seen this much commitment towards social justice, reform of what's going on here in Oregon. But nonetheless, it's been a joy, so I want to say that. And also, I had the greatest surprise. So I was being driven from the airport in, whatever the airport is, right, in Portland, up to here, and we were going down the side street, and I saw a 40 ounce on the corner, right, on the grass. There was a 40 ounce of kombucha. And so, like, where I'm from, usually you have 40 ounce of Old E or like Colt 45. It was a 40 ounce a day of kombucha. I said, well, where are we? We're in Oregon. So I would say, you do it. You know how to do it. So some of you probably have not been to Edwin's, right, in Cleveland, Ohio. So what I want to do, because I'll start talking about this, and people will say, they can't quite understand or touch what's going on here. But I just want to show you a very short video someone did. It kind of gives you what's going on. And I'll get into depth and experience and tell you how it came to be, the work that's really being done, and that room that we have left to go. Okay, so sit back, enjoy it, and well, you can play your cell phones if you wish to, but I would suggest just watching this.
There's 8 different type of knife cuts. Before I be doing my own cooking, when I used to cook, I wouldn't as loose as I am now with a knife. I never cut that many mushrooms in my life. Now I'm pretty good at cutting now.
Good. Is everyone here? All right. Are we ready? Yeah. This is going to be the most anticipated restaurant opening Cleveland's seen. And it happens today in about 10 minutes. So, if I say Ed, what would you say?
Win.
No, if I said Ed, win. If I said Ed, win. That's right, Ed wins, okay?
All right, give me the mac and cheese, please.
We've got a lot of walk-ins. There's like anticipation. You can feel it. It's like palpable.
Hey, I'm coming through. Coming behind you hot. Coming behind you hot. 22, 73-1, fire. Passing our steak, please. You should have. I didn't say five. Shut up. I need those rabbit now. One rabbit up. Drop the fucking phone before I break it. I swear to God. Lobster base fire.
All right. Well, good morning. Good morning. Morning. My name is Brandon Krastowski. I'll be the one, stirring the pot, I guess you could say, in culinary terms. The short of it is a restaurant saved my life. And because of that, I'm here today. We're doing what you see. Again, we're a culinary school and a restaurant. We're both 2 in 1. So you're the opening class of Edwin's, and that Saturday, November 1st, is showtime. That'll be day 1 of Edwin's, open to the public, and that's where history begins. Reggie, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday work? Good.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, most people are probably erring to the side of 7 mics on them.
Aaron, how's it going? All right. Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Nice for you.
You're all set. So you're going to begin Tuesday, October 1st at 12 o'clock. Yeah. All right.
Where do I go next? Gonna go around me, and through the wine cellar? Yeah.
And here, Armagnac. That's correct. And I live, that's my town, right here. Land, Les Landes, yeah. Very good. This is the Bordeaux wine country right here, okay? Cannes, Nice, from the Salade Niçoise, right here. Italy is here.
That's the Mediterranean down here?
Right here. The cognac is made on the city of Cognac, right here.
First, you just fascinated by listening to this man talk. To me, it's like a chef that you see on TV or in a movie.
All right, so voila, so Edwin's. So let me tell you, first start off by saying this. In this speech, we've got about 30 minutes plus some question and answer. I really want to cover, this journey that I've been on to change the face of reentry. Also the impact and how we've moved the needle here at Edwin's, but also where we're sorely lacking in our community in executing our nation's stated vision, enumerated as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, for me, my journey started out in a jail cell, right? And anyone who's been to jail or close to it, there's something very interesting that occurs. You have this realization that you don't have freedom, right? It's been stripped from you. And that's something that you appreciate more once you've gone through it, or maybe you appreciate it a lot right now, but this idea of freedom and having it isn't always guaranteed, okay? It can be taken away. And I'll never forget, being stripped down and transferred from cell to cell and then transported to another jail, like a piece of meat. And I'm not talking like prime or choice meat, but more like select cuts. Right, so I kind of going from prison to prison, and then I had to face this judge, and he's just a human being like us. We're human beings. We make judgments, and I sat in front of this judge, and I just remember him studying me like a cold lump on his plate. And instead of giving me 10 years in prison, he gives me probation. Right? What a gift! What another life I received. When I look back at that moment, I know that was afforded to me because of race, right? That plays a role in this system. We know we disproportionately, incarcerate minorities, right? 47% of our prison population is in fact minorities, but it's about 25% of our actual population in the U.S. So I knew that granted me a break, but I didn't look back. And what I found next was probably the next biggest thing that happened in my life, which was I found a mentor. I didn't know it, he didn't know it, but I was in Detroit working at this restaurant. This big chubby Greek chef says, come on in, I'll teach you, I'll train you. And what this chef, his name was Chef George, what Chef George did was he taught me a very simple lesson. That he says it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice that makes perfect. And what he did from a very young age, he started grooming me to do things the right way, the fundamentals, the ratios of the French cuisine. Okay, it allowed me to get my ass out of Detroit and then go to New York, go to culinary school, which was wonderful. I went to the Culinary Institute of America. Has anyone heard of that school? Real nice school, very expensive school. Okay, still paying it off, but nonetheless, I remember getting there and seeing the people around me and their skill set, their skill level, and like here I'm making I'm making mayonnaise, right? Turn around, Julianne, like you saw in that video, and the people to my left and right weren't able to do that. I said, what's wrong with these guys, right? You know what was wrong? We were really nothing, but they didn't have a mentor like George, right? It was such a significant step into my career, into where I wanted to go, was having that mentor teach me the right way. So I want you to remember this, because I'm going to put it all together in a few minutes, right? And then so when I went there, I said, well, if I can be better than most, why not work for the best restaurateur in the country, which was Charlie Trotter. Anyone from Chicago here? Is that right? What's that?
I've been there.
What'd you think?
That's true.
Pretty cheap. Pretty cheap, all right? Well, no, it's not. We have very expensive. He was regarded as the best restaurateur in the country, Chef Trotter, and not just for his cuisine, right? His cuisine was excellent, right? It was freshness. So we'd have gooey duck that we'd work with that were fresh. We'd have live crabs, in the cooler, and illegal caviar from from the Caspian Sea. He was a freak for the details. But what most importantly he taught me there was he taught me that you can make anything happen with what you have. Now, see what Chef Trotter would do. Is there any kitchen people in here, or people working in a restaurant? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, perfect. So 7:30 on a Friday night isn't probably the slowest time. You don't have much time. You don't have much space. So what would happen at 7:30 on a Friday night? This is me as a young apprentice. I'd be there and I was like, I cannot handle anymore. Right? You think in your mind, if the chef calls another ticket, I'm done. Right? I'm finished. And what Chef Trotter would do, he would say, Brandon, I want you to meet our guest chef, Nikki. All right, Nikki comes up, and meanwhile, she's half inebriated because she just donated a bunch of money to Charlie Trotter's foundation. She's having the time of her life, and Chef Trotter puts you right on your station. And he says, why don't you set her up with the first course? They put a napkin out, forks and knife, and he's like, well, why don't you show her also how to make your dish? Right, so as anyone in this world, when you think you can handle so much, you need people to push you to know that you can handle more. And that's what Chef Trotter did. He did it with that. He asked me to shovel the back alley. And he gave me a 4-inch spade shovel. It's January in Chicago. The only thing you say to a chef is what? Yeah, chef, exactly. So Chef Trotter got it through to you that, look, you can do anything with what you have. So in that case, in the rest of my life, I was cursed, right? I mean, you're at the grocery store waiting for that person to scan. You're like, why can't you make it happen? Why can't you make it happen, right? Your whole life starts to change now. But what I did, I took a risk and I said, I'm just going to go to France. And meanwhile, I'm in the air, and I'm thinking, I can't read, write, or speak this language, right? But I knew with Chef Trotter's guidance in me that I could do anything with what I had. So I get to France, I go there, I work in this small town called Tours. Has anyone gone to Tours before? Have you really? What'd you eat? So anyway, yeah, so tour is where I landed, right? And I go to this chef, Chef Jean Bardet, who was a great chef, He had a great touch, and always had a cigar in his mouth. I could never figure out how he could pull a cigar out of his mouth, taste the sauce and says, you know, it needs more of this or that. I still haven't perfected that talent of exchanging nicotine for, for a sauce. But he was also a crooked chef in kind of a, well, it's a bad way. He would sell like very expensive bottles of wine to a guest, but he would fill it with cheap wine. And it was awful, that son of a gun. But what he would do, he kept getting caught by Michelin. And Michelin would take a star away, and Jean would say, I won't do it again, I promise. And then he would do it again, they'd take it away. It was this game of cat and mouse. But nonetheless, he was a great chef, and he taught me a lot. And I ended up spending about 3 or 4 months with him, and then worked my way all the way to the best restaurant in Paris. And I tell you this a little bit to amuse you, but also what I found was the third greatest lesson: hard work doesn't have a language, right? Jean Bardet, this kind of awkward chef, gave me an opportunity as an immigrant, really, not able to read, write, or speak. And from there, I was able to work my tail off and get to the best restaurant in all Paris. I was not defined by race, gender, ethnicity, criminal past. I wasn't judged by anything but my work ethic in that kitchen. And that's always stuck with me. So in any event, I moved to Manhattan after Paris, and I said I'm going to be the best chef in the world, because we know the world ends at the Hudson River. And I said, this is where I'm going to be. And I'm working at great restaurants, and the calls came from home. The first call from George was, you know that guy Quentin? I said, yeah, Quentin was sweet. He came from Alabama, was a watermelon hauler. Sweetest man you'd ever meet in your life. Really, I don't think you heard a fly. He said he was found stabbed to death 23 times in a building. I said, Quentin? He's like, yeah, Quentin. Okay, a couple weeks go by, sous chef Mike got murdered over $5. Someone was going to cut his lawn, he was getting $5. Guy didn't want to cut his lawn, so he plugged him. That was it. And I said to myself, are you kidding me? So all this is wearing on your heart, right? And it's wearing on your mind. And I'm here in these great kitchens working on copper pots and Bonnet ovens, these French imported ovens. And I found I actually contemplated going to seminary school. But some things I like a little too much. Well, pray for me. But I said to myself, I said, I've got to do something with my life. I've got to commit it to something that helped save me. And that was creating fair and equal opportunities for men and women who were part of the justice system or injustice system, right? Because we know poverty kind of covers more of this than just incarceration does. So I said, in 2004, it happened. I was in the corner of 55th and Park, and the second most important life moment happened in my life. I found out what I was supposed to do. So an academic could probably tell us, a writer could tell me better. I think it was Mark Twain who said it. There's 2 most important moments in this world: the moment you're born and the moment you find out what you're supposed to do. And I found out what I was supposed to do. So that was it. From then, I said, I've got to open this place called Edwards. So fast forward about 10 years. Through all the ridicule, through all the the laughter, people thought it wasn't possible. How could you do that? Through all the doubt, through all these things that humans have conceived about someone who's committed a mistake and served time in prison, you weather it, you figure it out, because you always know it's possible. It's right in front of you. That's called faith, right? That's called hope. It's called belief. And in any event, so I ended up started teaching in prison. Grafton Correctional Camp is the name of the institution, about 45 minutes southwest or southeast of Cleveland. And I started leading a class of 25 men. I did this because there was an individual who asked for money, and I thought I had everything together. I had my business plan, I had my incorporation, I had my team, I had my brand. I said, but I want your dough. Can you help me out? I'm trying to help. And he said, why aren't you doing it now? I said, that's a good question. Why am I not doing it now? So in prison, we had a class of 25 men. The first hurdle I had to overcome was getting knives inside of a yard. And they said, well, you can't do that. I was, well, why not? I can't teach someone how to cut with these low haul knives in a bike chain, too. They're like, well, if you have a tether and you have this, I said, all right. So we just drilled some holes in a knife, and we put some really lightweight cable on it. And literally, if you pulled it hard enough, it snapped. I didn't tell the guards that, but they said, okay, that works. You can bring it in. So next thing you know, we're cooking. We're cooking with gas. We're cooking with knives. We're making things like foie gras. We're making things like bouillabaisse. We're making these French classics. And what happened at the end of this program, for those who were able to come home, so people were there for life, they started to get jobs. And what the Department of Correctional Rehabilitation in Ohio saw was, that's what we want to do. We want to make sure someone's rehabilitated. All right, they don't have the funds to pay for it, but they want to see the rehabilitation of it, right? So that was the first like domino to fall. And then there was this idea, I started asking for more money. I said, well, give this, and it was enough to open a restaurant. Okay, so if any of you have a chance, watch the documentary called Knife Skills with a knife, right? It went to the Oscars last year. It's a documentary about the founding of Edwards. It was a blast, okay? I mean, opening the restaurant was something, but to see it, because you forgot it all, was a real joy. And what you'll see in there is life, right? It's not always one-dimensional. It's not always simple. There's not always one reason. There's not always one this or one that. But that's what Edwards is. Edwards is this place where someone can come and hope for a better tomorrow, and then fulfill it within that environment. So Edwards is a 6-month program. You saw the restaurant, right? It's a brick and mortar place. So for 6 months, someone comes through this program. They learn culinary arts and hospitality to the highest level, and they lead with fundamentals, right? Just like Chef George had me lead with. What also happens at Edwards, you get business basics. So you're looking at P&Ls. You're going over serve safe. So you have safety and sanitation experience, gastronomy, the history of food. I mean, you come here and you get an education just like the CIA. But the difference is we pay people to go through it. Okay, that's part of the model. Along this journey, we have someone on staff that's a case manager. It's a word I hate to use because it sounds so like sterile, right? We essentially are like that mother, that father in the house that's making sure any barrier that you have or anything that you want to achieve is knocked down. No excuses. We see the problem, we fix the problem. So meanwhile, someone's getting their skill set down, someone's getting these barriers, these hurdles just knocked aside, and so someone's able to grow. So it's not just hope, everyone. It's not just hope, it's a way to achieve it, right? A question that will come up later is, well, how do you accept people? I said, we accept everyone. It's easy as that. We don't ask about previous offense. We just ask if you've been in the justice system. We don't ask about education levels, because I know that, an illiterate person can cook, right? I did it, so it must be possible. So it's a very easy process, and that simplicity is what people have marveled so much about it. We don't even have an HR department, okay? Think about that, no HR department. The first thing I did in that place was rip all the cameras out and say, we can't have a culture of hope and belief and trust if we have all these things that are monitoring and so on and so forth. So when you think of Edwards, just think of it, how would you want your son or daughter to succeed? And that's what Edwards is. It's no different. It's no different. So the restaurant's great, right? It's going well. It's going well now, I hope. I'm not there, it's Friday night, but it's going well. But in 2013, it was also going very well. 2014 as well. But there was things that just tug on you, right? And I believe my job is to serve those who need it more. That's what I'm convicted to do. That's my conviction. I need to serve others. So when I look to my boss, I look at those I'm serving. And if I'm not fulfilling their needs, I need to go, right? That should be the jury. And what I noticed was happening in late 2014 was, we had people sleeping in cars and shelters, which we knew happens. But when you're trying to push someone to memorize things, and you got exams coming up next week, right? How many of your parents want you to live in a shelter while you're going through that time of learning and growth and pressure and stress? No one's parents want that, right? And I didn't want that for the people we serve. So I said, we're going to build housing. And then you're fucking crazy. I said, I know, but we'll figure it out, right? Because with hard work, you can make it happen. You can make it happen with what you have, just like Chef Trotter said. So in the course of about 3 months, raised $1.2 million. And I take no state or federal money, mind you. It's not like I call Uncle Sam, hey, no, it's a smart business, and then educating and engaging the community. And they responded. So, and then a month later, put a 3-building deal together. So now we have a campus, right? And the campus, it was finished in 2015. So we have free housing for any current student. There's another building for graduate housing. Now you could pay $200 a month to live there, which isn't so bad, right? I don't know what campus they charge you here. But it's probably not $200 a month. We got to talk to his faculty and administration. And that fitness center, library, and test kitchen is a place where you can dream big, and you can also get big. If you like the weights, there's something therapeutic about lifting. And anyway, so we have this campus. So now this idea of hope and a way to achieve it, it strengthens even more because a prison in southern Ohio or in Oregon or in Texas where we get students from, in Florida we get students from, in Minnesota we get students from, someone can say, I can go there. I can go there. I may not have a place to live that I know, but they have a place that I can live. And they have a job that I can work. And they have a future I can build. So a lot of this is application and fulfilling that promise of achieving hope. Because we all have ideas, right? We all have ways we want to execute these ideas. But we have responsibilities when we do put an idea out there that it's accessible and that it can achieve what you so promised. So this is what Edwin's does. What else is going on? So we've taken these stats. You know, I mean, some of you know these stats. You're like these social justice gurus. I love it. But I mean, you know, the United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the prison population, right? I think a couple of politicians use that in their repertoire, which is great. What else? So we have about 2.3 million people behind bars, and you know, almost 700,000 of those will come home each year. If you throw in the probation and parolees, and you look at all this, it's a separate city of 8 million people. It's a lot, significant. That's just right now. What does that mean 10 years ago or 10 years from now? It's a significant amount of people who are touched by the system. We look at stats like, the one that just always irks me the most is how much we spend on this. You know, over $7 billion, which is more than higher education, right? So priorities are just kind of different, right? They're different in our country. They're different. And this idea of recidivism, right? It's not a spice, right? Recidivism is the rate at which you return back to prison. It is, you know, you're upwards of 50% or more. Edwin's we're at 1%. 1%. Why is that, right? Why is that? Is it that we're selecting and cherry picking? You know, no, we take everybody, right? We don't even ask about what you've done, where your education was. It's about truly believing in another human being the way that you would want to believe in yourself, those that you love, those that you care for, right? It's a very simple approach. So I say all this for a couple of reasons. One, people say, well, what the heck do I do with it, right? What the heck do I do? I'm just an accountant, or I'm just a student, or this and that. Well, you go to prison, like we did today, right? And someone there doesn't get to go home today or right now, right? You have freedom. So damn it, that's more than a lot of people have. That's more than 2.3 million people have in this country. So you have freedom, right? Don't blow that. Two, most of you are willing to, right, and able to. And if you can, apply your perspective to what it is you believe in. So, for instance, an accountant, right, is an example I like to use. If you teach accounting, you can inspire someone to be an accountant, or overcome the hurdles to become an accountant, or how to achieve a profession. You can share your wisdom. Well, what happens a lot of times in life, someone will say, look, I'm just this white guy. I've never been in prison, and what do I know, right? It's like, what do you know? Are you kidding me? You probably got a nice career, or a career, and you've overcome obstacles. Share that experience. Get involved with this Transformative Justice Initiative with Melissa back here. I mean, get involved. Get involved. Don't just sit back there and wait. The biggest thing we have, and the biggest problem I find when people will call the restaurant, they'll tell me their ideas. They'll tell me how much they want to do this. They have a great plan. And I just say to them what that one foundation said to me, why aren't you doing something right now? You know, start in a church basement. Start in your spare room. Just start to take up space in this world to make it a reality. Because until it's vulnerable, it's never a reality. And how many people buy something here? Lunch or dry cleaner? Everyone buys something here. You're a consumer. Ask the people that you consume from how they hire. The more that we put this in people's face, this idea, this thought process that prison isn't necessarily a negative thing. It could be a very positive thing, right? There's this Ban the Box initiative. I know it went around Ohio. I don't know where it's at here. And it's fine. Yeah, ban the box. But you know, we should expand the box. Because down the road, you're going to do a background check. And after you do a background check, you're going to find something that went wrong. And now you have to sit across from this human being with this preconceived notion that that's who they are now. You know, that person just made a decision with the knowledge they had at that moment. But who are they today? We have to expand that dialogue, because I would bet you, and I'm not advocating for everyone here to get in trouble and go to prison, but I would advocate that the perspective you gain when in solitude, when you have time to self-reflect and know yourself, is more powerful than education here, okay? When it comes to knowing yourself, right? You can't mask it with buying something, right? You can't mask it with something that you fill these voids with. It's truly a place to reflect. And I can tell you, when I was in France, I had time to reflect. I was alone, right? I couldn't really speak to people. I was like a loner. And it was probably the most powerful time in my life, was to find out who I am and in my own skin, feel comfortable within it. It was a positive moment, and I think we have to start talking about the incarceration like this. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So where does Edwin's go? So today we're jumping, right? We have the restaurant. We've got the campus. In December, opened a butcher shop, which the idea now is to be better than the Culinary Institute of America, all right? That school is great, but I say it's too expensive. So why can't we build something that could be bigger and better and service those who need it the most? And so the butcher shop opened in December, and just like Edwin's, we have to sell to make a profit to sustain the school, right? That's like the trinity here. And what we do at the butcher shop is the same thing. So now students come out of Edwin's restaurant, go to Edwin's butcher shop, they're breaking down whole cows, they're breaking down whole pigs, they're dealing with sausage and making charcuterie. Think about that as a chef. How many schools are even teaching that? And even the culinary schools, they don't, okay? Let alone someone in the industry who opens up a bag of meat, they don't know where it comes from. So again, our students are becoming sharper, they're becoming stronger, they're becoming more confident in their ability to do this profession. And when you have that, you have the ability to lead. And when you lead, how do you think our students lead? The way that we've led. Give equal opportunities, right? So we're just slowly, I don't want to say like malicious, like, whoa, but we're slowly taking our graduates who are now employed in over 100 restaurants in Cleveland, and they're leading like we lead, right? So the butcher shop's a big way to strengthen and build that esteem. Two, we've got a bakery, so I got architect drafting plans for a bakery. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a bakery open. So what does that give a student? It gives them the opportunity to bake with their hands, see how yeast works, and oven spring, and all that sort of fun stuff, right? So we can't stop getting better. And truly the biggest difficulty at Edwin's, and I can say this for myself, so I'm not speaking for everyone that went through the program, but the most difficult thing to do in 6 months is to build esteem, is to rehumanize what prison and poverty has stripped away. And it's the saddest thing. It's the saddest thing to think that we as humans have done this to one another, or done it to ourselves, or however you want to put your dots together. Okay, you're the philosophers, not me. That's the hardest thing to do. But by continuing to challenge to the top, asking for the way to achieve it, and then switching the tables out to another position, to another position, to another position, it's like a ripping muscle. You break, you rebuild, you break, you rebuild. So we don't plan on stopping growth. Right after the bakery, it'll be a spice shop or a fish shop, and so on. We do a lot more consulting now, right? So somebody has the idea, hey, how can we bring this to Willamette Valley? Or, oh, give me a call, it's easy, I'll give you a card. But we've opened up a restaurant last year for people in recovery. So in Portsmouth, Ohio is kind of like the epicenter where this opioid kind of spread began. And it really ravaged Ohio, probably it's ravaged Oregon, I don't know. But opioids and what this does to a family, to an individual, it can be beat, right? So if you don't know someone going through it, if you're going through it, we can beat back this monster. We just got to find more ways. We got to work a little harder. Like any basic physics know, it takes a greater or equal amount of force to move an object. We just got to work a little harder at beating back this thing called addiction. But we opened up a restaurant for people in recovery. It's going quite well. It's been open about a year and a half now. We're opening up a small pizza shop for a homeless shelter in July. So empowering men and women who are homeless, granting accessibility to the homeless population in a very unpretentious way, and doing it to the top, you see? So the whole formula is simple, but I encourage you to get involved, right? Get involved, get involved, get involved, because you never know what you do and how it affects someone else one day down the road. But I mean, that's the story of Edwin's. That's what we do. This is where we want to go. I feel I'm getting the hook here a little bit, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But I want to definitely leave some time. We got about 10 minutes for Q&A? 8? 15? 5 to 8 minutes. Okay, we'll take about 5 to 8 minutes for Q&A because I can't cover it all. But it's most importantly to know that if you see something here that you can take a part of and have an effect on, do it. But any questions? So voila. Sir.
You mentioned 1% recidivism rate.
Yep. How
much have you been able to track? How many of the people stay in that profession?
Yep.
What is that number? Because obviously it's
One.
teaching a whole lot of additional skills besides the culinary arts.
Correct. Well, your question was, do we track how many people go back?
Stay in that career track.
Oh, stay in the career track. Yeah, absolutely. So we're about 95%? Yeah, it's over 90%. Yeah, some people go back to a career they once had, but still, it's another step up in the right direction. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a brutal industry, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you're just shaking your thing. All right. All right. Hey.
Yeah, so I heard you mention that you had some people from like Texas and several different
Yep.
states around the country. At what point do people, are like your students on parole? Are they finished with parole? What is kind of the process for them applying? Can they apply while they're still in prison?
Yeah. Well, we have like don't ask, don't tell policy. I mean, a parole officer doesn't want to hear that, but I mean, we don't ask what you did. Where you know, if someone's here in front of us now, we're going to employ them as soon as they've talked to the powers that be to be able to be in that space, right? You can apply in prison. We're on JPay, right? We're on core links. If you got someone who's got a federal case, we have an address. You can write a letter. So it's very simple. Just write us. We'll get you in the circle. We'll tell you how to get here, and we'll tell you what to expect. And we do it simply, right? It's not this whole convoluted thing. Here's the application. Like, we'll get you there. We'll get you there. Yeah. And I left some cards with the men in prison because they knew some people who might want to be a part of that. Yeah. Father.
Yeah. You talked a lot about the dignity of every individual. What you said about the mentoring, not so much the skills, but the relationship that the mentor and the mentee develop. I think that's the critical ingredient.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. I think you're right. And it is. I don't think you can have, I don't think you can, if you can't get inside someone, right, in their heart, in their mind, if you can't get inside here, whatever you're doing is just on the peripheral, right? You're not going to get 110% of what can be taught. So yeah, the relationship is huge. The culture is huge. You come in there, there's people that look like you. They're going through the same problems that you have. And then you've got a team of leadership who wants you to beat those odds, right? We're on your team. Let's go. And we're understanding. So it definitely creates a culture that's conducive for building a relationship. That is really important. If there's just a bunch of stiffs, it wouldn't be effective. Yeah.
You talked about how people face personal challenges and you guys just kind of figure out how to fix it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
So can you talk more about like what kind of challenges crop up and how you address them?
Okay, good question. Yeah, so the first thing is I want to preface this by saying we all need to be in touch with our instincts, right? With our bodies. Our bodies are going to tell us things before our minds do. Okay, so I'm saying that so all the time we're in touch. We're making sure that we're feeling and not just waiting for something to happen. So the environment is such. So students are there like 4 days a week. So they're working roughly 40 hours or so. So we're around somebody quite a bit to see this, right? So if someone's using, we can see that there's using. If someone's struggling at home, maybe it'll come in the right way, and so on, right? So there's a touch, there's a proximity that we're with each person, and that's really important. Other systems we have in place, we meet every week as a group, and a group means like that case manager person, right? And I hate that word, but she's there. We've got all our chefs. We've got everyone from the RA from the dorms. We all meet and we talk about what someone's going through, right? And we also are measuring where they want to go and what steps they're taking to get to that destination. So we have like a plus-minus system. So we're constantly communicating. I've got this handwriting analysis expert. Think about that. It's wild. It was this like 70-year-old Jewish woman who came in at dinner like the first week we were open, and she was getting ripped off Sauvignon Blanc. And she says, I want to see your student's handwriting. I said, well, why not? Whatever, okay, sure. Right? I mean, what do you say? Right? I always say yes. I say, they ask me to come here. I say yes. Who knows what happens, right? Yes. And she ended up volunteering for the first 6 months. And what she's done is she's become a family member. She's not after anything. She's just there to look at your handwriting and say, well, it looks like you're very confident with the swoop of your L. And I am very confident. It looks like maybe you're a little insecure about these things. Well, man, I am really insecure. So what she is just someone to talk to. So this kook of a lady who was getting drunk on Sauvignon Blanc, I had to hire her because the lines were so long to meet with her. It's now part of the program. You have to meet with Barbara Miller. And it's just do nothing but listening to your intuition. Like, this person cares. If we put care around somebody, it's gonna turn into something positive. So she's part of that report card too. So there's a lot of things that we do. Does that answer your question, like how we approach it, or was it more specific? Yeah. So that's the idea. Just keep getting closer. Like Father mentioned, that relationship, and try to get in front of problems. And if someone does relapse, we know that's part of recovery. Let's find a stronger sponsor. Let's get them in more meetings. Let's make sure we're watching a little bit more. Maybe they should be doing one table instead of 2 tables. Maybe it's too much too soon. So we're very sensitive to the fact that if someone's going through it, we have to find a way to overcome it, so long as somebody wants to try. And that goes for addiction, it goes for depression, that goes for any sort of family struggle. Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
Since you said there were like the RAs in the housing,
Yes.
are those also people with already validated programs that continue?
Well, that's a good question. If you didn't hear, she's already someone who already went through the program. Yes, 51% of my managers right now are graduates. Even my accountant, my RA, the sous chef, pastry chef, bar manager. I mean, and he's going to be a general manager. The people running that restaurant for people in recovery, graduates. The people that are going to run the pizza shop, graduates. So the idea is to empower, because we cannot do this. Everyone's got to understand what this is about, and that perspective has to be shared to understand. So yes, yeah, he is. He is. Yeah. That's right.
You said this, but I didn't catch.
Sure.
Are there women in the program?
There are women. Yeah. There are about 90% men. Of those 90% men are all the student population. I say about 75% are African American. Okay, this is really reflective of what prisons are today. In Cleveland, if you don't know demographics, a liberal city, 60% black. Poverty is about 30-35%. It's 2,000 homeless school kids. Highest infant mortality rate in the country. There's problems there, right? There's problems. You know, it's not perfect. Yeah.
What does your support look like for people once they have job placement?
So job placement, good question. So what does support look like? So I hate that word job placement. Yeah, I hate it. It's not like you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, right? So in the first 2 weeks, a couple of things happen. You gotta get health insurance, you gotta get a bank account, which means you need an ID, right? You also have to write a life plan. A life plan. The first week or 2, this is what you have to get done. A life plan says, where do you want to go from today until 5 years from now? If you never thought about it, well, think about it now and write it down. So when we say job placement, we look at someone's trajectory and where they want to go, and we try to hook them up with the right job that's going to be the next step to the next step to the next step to the next step. So it is placement in a way, but we have 55 jobs just in Cleveland waiting to hire a graduate. And I'm sure it'd be the same here, bless you. I'm sure it'd be the same here in Oregon. I mean, the restaurant industry needs good people who are leaders, but we're just trying to find the next right step for someone. And
Do you reach out to juvenile training schools?
good question. So I work with DYS, Department of Youth Services in Ohio. So they have not gotten on this whole reentry wagon as much as the adults have. To incarcerated youth, at least in Ohio, $350 a day, $350. An adult's about $64 a day. So the amount of programming, the amount of support, the amount of encouragement. I mean, look, your brain's not even developed as youth, right? It takes a lot more to get these horses in one line. But so we haven't done an assertive effort to work with youth, but we don't say no to youth. But I'll tell you, there's only 2 graduates, 17 years old, out of 300 in our program. Median age 30s, 34, 35. We're coming home on a 2nd or 3rd number, and the time's ticking.
Is there a certain age range that you look for, and how long is your program?
6 months. No age range. Are you interested? We've had 67-year-olds complete the program.
One last question.
Well, listen,
Oh, okay.
you have the last question.
And I feel really bad. Is that someone else is a student?
Oh, don't feel guilty. Just say.
Do you see any role for the federal government to play in supporting these kind of reentry programs, either legislatively or funding wise?
Yes. I mean, legislators can always make a difference, right? I mean, that's the #1 collateral sanctions. Knock down the easy ones first. Let's not try to do something that's so impossible. I mean, how about getting basic voting rights back, right? I don't think this is a state that has basic voting rights. I mean, come on, that's draconian. So, I mean, there's some simple things you can knock down for legislation, but you said specifically federal, so that's more state, right? So federal, so I work very closely with our 2 state senators. Republican Rob Portman is probably the biggest advocate. He's the father of the Second Chance Act. He's a gentleman who came in 10 years ago before it was hip and cool and saw some humanity that needed to be saved and put bipartisan support together and did it. He was renewed it once, he renewed it again under the current administration. Now, say what you want, because there's liberal media, there's conservative media. This president has done more for reentry than anyone else. I'm very proud of what he's done for reentry. He's at the First Step Act that he initiated. He renewed the Second Chance Act. He's put a spotlight on those coming home from prison and hoping that their lives get a little bit better. So federally, I do work closely, but I don't take any of their dough. They want to give it to you, I think, I don't want your dough. But they can make a big impact. The federal prison population is much, much less than all, you know that. Okay.
Actually, it's a great segue.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
So you've been a very patient audience, thank you. We're gonna have really quick 1-minute pitch for the reform ideas. This is the segue part. And then you'll be invited to go to whatever table you want to talk about which reform ideas. So do we want to start with access to education, the federal reform idea? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and our group was working on researching Pell Grants and how we can have more access for post-secondary and higher education for adults who are in custody. And it's really important because 90% of people who are currently in custody will be released at some point, and they need the tools to be able to be successful upon their release. And it's been found that with post-secondary education, there is much higher rates of job employment, much lower rates of recidivism, and it can be very effective in just helping set these men up for men and women up for success on re-entry. And most importantly, what we need to do here today is get all of you to write to your federal legislatures, whether that's the senators or the congressmen, and ask them to support the REAL Act, which would reinstate the Pell Grant permanently so that incarcerated individuals can receive it.
What was the name of that? Real? The Real?
Real.
The R-E-A-L?
Yes.
Does that stand for something?
It is the reinstatement of education.
I got it, Real.
Case studies, reinstatement.
Hi everyone, I'm Elle, and we've been working on a proposal to implement a peace studies program at both Willamette University that would be accessible to some folks incarcerated at OSP. To varying degrees, all communities experience violence, interpersonal or structural in nature. In our proposal, we identify a need at Willamette University and Oregon State Penitentiary for different modes of conflict resolution. To identify foundations of inequity and build peace, we propose that the experience and expertise of incarcerated men down the street has the potential to enrich our respective communities through the establishment of an interdisciplinary peace studies minor. Our curriculum includes 3 primary components featuring traditional academic courses for Willamette credit, professionally led workshops for state-recognized certification, and creative expression. American histories, structures, and violences inform the ways in which people relate to one another in and outside of prison walls. In this sense, it is a simplification to assume that incarcerated folks are the only demographic in need of these skills. Unique tools developed by peace builders within prison walls are an underutilized resource that we believe has the potential to offer insight into applied practices for conflict resolution in closed communities such as our campus. This collaboration would further our investment in accountability, care, and one another. Thanks.
And then there are 2 proposals for supporting families with incarcerated persons.
Hi, my name is Danya, and our project looked at the Family First program at OSP, which allows incarcerated men to have 6 annual events with their kids. These events are very different than visitation events, which means that they have a lot less boundaries and there's a lot more of the connection. There's a lot more strengthening of that bond between incarcerated fathers and their kids. So we're looking at expanding that program as only 3% at OSP can actually participate at it now, even though a lot more are eligible. So if you're interested in that, come talk to us over here.
My name is Olivia, and we looked at visitation at OSP, and visitation is a really valuable part of an inmate's experience while they're in prison, and it allows them to stay connected to people on the outside. It has been shown to lead to a reduction in recidivism and also an increase in morale while they're in prison. However, the system right now is not as beneficial as it could be, and so we proposed a couple of changes, including evening visits, healthy vending machines, and beautification of both the reading area and the visiting room, and this would lead to an increase in connection and support for inmates from the outside and better morale while they're incarcerated, so if you're interested. whoever got to us.
Hey everyone, my name is PJ Gibson. I'm a senior at Willamette University. I'd like everyone to think about a time that they did something that they regretted between the ages of 15 and 25. And imagine all the memories that you've made between then and now being replaced by memories behind prison walls. We believe that the sentence of life without parole strips people of hope who deserve it, and also ignores a human's capacity for change. Backed by neurological research, economic incentives, and Oregon's progressive political landscape, we hope to create a parole board that looks specifically at people's serving life without parole. Through this parole board, people serving life who demonstrate a strong capacity for change and have been already serving for 15 years would have the opportunity to have the possibility of parole. If you're interested in learning more about it, talk to Cynthia Ramirez, Rebecca Lopez Figueroa, and myself. Yeah.
My name is Francesca Napals. Our policy proposal is the culmination of work done by myself, Hannah, and two incarcerated men, Ben and Daniel, who gave their stories and experiences as a baseline for understanding the problem facing us. United States prisons are facing a crisis of aging, and this denies incarcerated individuals their humanity and also places an undue burden on taxpayers who are paying for inmates to age in prison. We believe that elderly inmates who are at least 50 years old and have been in prison for more than 20 years, excluding men convicted of aggravated murder at OSP, should be eligible for a second look. We are confident that our proposal is working towards restorative justice approach, which we believe is incredibly important. We hope this proposal serves as a starting point for conversations around giving incarcerated individuals an opportunity to plead their case in front of a judge for a second chance at life on the inside. Hannah and I are incredibly grateful to all of our inside classmates, and especially Ben and Daniel, for being so patient and eager to take on this project.
Hi, my name's Maddie. Riley and I are the two outside students that have been working on this reform project, and the two inside students who have helped us inform our work are named Tyler and Darcy. We came to this issue of fairness in prisoners' wages under the guiding example embraced by victim advocacy, which says that each person is the expert on their own experiences. The men inside OSP are the experts on their experiences as workers and not as protected employees. These men know that their rewards and awards for labor do not serve them in self-sufficiency inside their time at OSP, or outside as it affects their relationships, contributing to some of the undue and unintentional harm done to their families and support systems if they have them. Adults in custody in Oregon deserve more than a precarious point system translating to less than $1 an hour for their work. We have appealed to the DOC director, Colette Peters, to ask her to find it in her heart, mind, and budget to adjust the PRAS system to match inflation rates since its inception in 1996, and to give more opportunity for upward earning potential inside an incarcerated person sentence at Oregon State Penitentiary.
Hi, my name is Nikki. I've been working with Gonzalo and then two inside students, Michael and Arlen, and we've been trying to improve the reentry program inside OSP, hoping that we can implement a program that involves coding entrepreneurship, culinary skills, or construction skills, starting from a format of programs that already exist and boast of recidivism rates between 0 and 2%, generally speaking. Our hope is that this kind of change, like more educational and vocational focus to transition, would then bleed out towards the rest of the state and other institutions that we have. We're also looking to create a longer program that enables incarcerated adults to build their resumes, start savings accounts, and become more in touch with the outside world, as it has changed in a lot of ways very dramatically since a lot of people's incarcerations.
Great, thank you. So I want to, at this point, invite you all to move around, change tables, meet your neighbors, and talk about these issues. Yeah.
Strategize. There were a few of us that we strategized. Oh, the other, I guess the other issue is the number of I think as an institution, something I have to president we offer support to family members, loved ones, and those incarcerated, help them understand what's about to happen to them and or advocate for incarcerated. So anyway, see, I also branch managers actually ask for labor and skills and residential street, about 80% of my office.
Hi, everybody. I know you probably didn't get very far in your conversations and there's a lot more to talk about. But I know that when you promise people that the end is going to be at 3 o'clock, you can't keep going. So, quick announcement. We have a video camera set up in the other room, and if you want to say something into the camera about what you learned at the summit or some ideas that have come out of it, that you're here, that's a videotape that's going to go to the guys inside who aren't able to be here. I am hopeful. I am working on gathering resources for a transformative justice initiative here at Willamette. I think to take Brandon's advice and just do it. I think I'm just doing it, looking for help, resources, skills, ideas. We're trying to come up with my own kind of business plan for it this summer. So if you are interested in helping with that, I'd love to have your input. I am thinking that some of these conversations that we started today can continue in the fall and throughout the next year. And Representative Peluso stopped me on her way out to say that she really appreciated this and was hopeful to work with me on doing future endeavors. So I think that's exciting. Okay, so Trevor has the closing role.
fortunate enough to be here last year as well, actually. And so it's great to be back. It's a privilege for many, many reasons. My name is Trevor Walraven. I am the co-founder and director of Public Education and Outreach with the Oregon Youth Justice Project. And for a living, I work for criminal defense attorneys throughout the state, primarily on capital cases and on young violent offenses. And also work with those teams who are typically adult professionals that are engaging on the youth side of things with kids that they may have never really had training on how to kind of connect with someone that's young and facing very serious decisions moving forward based on their actions, or at least the position that they're currently in. So I want to set the stage a little bit with kind of where we are or where we were in the 90s and still are, and then give some examples of maybe some restorative practices and things that are going on in this state and abroad that you may have not really thought about. And then I'll wrap up with a little bit about me before we kind of wrap this thing up. So we'll read through this. This happened in the 90s. It was something that occurred by a vote of the people. So Article 1, Section 15 of the Oregon Constitution used to read, "Laws for the punishment of crime shall be founded on the principles of information and not of vindictive justice." In the mid-90s with Measure 11, the creation of Oregon Youth Authority, several other things, this is part of what we did as well. And we changed it to, "Laws for the punishment of crime shall be founded on these principles: protection of society, personal responsibility, accountability for one's actions, and reformation." And when you think about kind of that shift to really a singular focus that does have a holistic piece to it, but to one that incorporates several other components, which are, you know, arguably a little bit more on the punitive side of things. That's a big shift in terms of Oregon's direction. So, as we move through time, this is kind of great, right? How does restorative justice look like this, right? So I mentioned my line of work. I was in Monterey, California last year on August. It rained every day I was there, and I was told that it was the first time that I at least remember being there. And I was told that it was going to be beautiful like every day, and it rained every day, except for the day I left. But one of the examples, and this is not the actual fire truck, but one of the examples in this conference that I went to was a case in a smaller county in California where there was a death penalty case. Death was on the table, and part of what the defense team did in working with the prosecutors as well as the county commissioners, the mayors of that area, was sought out what it would look like to satisfy a need that the area had. And based on that county's resources, one of the things that they really needed was a fire truck. And so part of the negotiation through that litigation process of an individual that was facing the death penalty was death was taken off the table. The resources that would have been allocated for prosecuting a death penalty case, which is far greater than the resources that are used to prosecute any other case, were reallocated to purchase a fire engine for that community. Now, not every community needs a fire engine, right? But the idea of doing something different, of stepping outside of that space that we typically go to, in addition to purchasing that fire engine, they had a plaque put on it to commemorate and honor the individual who had lost his life. And a reminder to that community as to what that can look like and what it looks like to come behind something that is a little bit more restorative in nature instead of destructive. So, again, that was California, and that's not the exact fire truck, but it at least kind of gives the example. So May 30th of 2014, this is the Veterans Memorial inside of the Oregon State Penitentiary right down the street. This is, to the best of my knowledge, and I have not researched it extensively, but it's the only Veterans Memorial within inside the walls of a penitentiary within the U.S., to the best of my knowledge. And this was something that that community inside, the Veterans Association in particular, which is a group of adults in custody who are allowed by the institution and empowered by the institution to create kind of opportunities and space for that environment, and tied to their culture. All those individuals that are within the Veterans Association in that club are individuals who have served in the military in some way, shape, or form. And this was something they wanted to do. They went to administration, they saved for it, they worked through that process, and they created this space. And it's really, you know, when you're talking about RJ, you're talking about restorative practices, it takes many different shapes, but it comes down to community kind of circling around and looking to improve those spaces to get back to a place where maybe they never were before, or to move forward in a positive way and try and create healing in that space. This is another picture of that. Those boots are metal boots that were all handcrafted inside the state penitentiary. Same thing with that helmet. The men inside did the work. They reached out to their networks and the people that come into the facility to help volunteer as well as organizations to raise the funds for this. And then they were able to work with administration to create that. This is the Healing Garden that is in the process of being built right now. It is, you know, I think it was mentioned earlier, maybe Brandon, if I have his name right, made mention of kind of the amount of time that you have while you're incarcerated, that you have this tremendous amount of time to like think and process and reflect. And while that is oftentimes true, part of what I recognize is, as time has gone on, is part of what you don't have within that time is always the feeling of safety and comfort that allows you to reflect in a more meaningful way. And so within prison systems, you're often on guard. You're often kind of not sure what the next kind of event is going to bring. And so having a place and a space that you can just kind of take the time to be vulnerable and feel and reflect in a way that can be tremendously healing, I think is tremendously important. And this is something that this garden is potentially going to offer. Here's another picture of it. You know, working, same thing, working with administration. I don't have any pictures of it, but in between the memorial being built and this in progress of being built, the Lifers Club at the Oregon State Penitentiary worked with administration to put in a play area for those who are coming in to visit their loved ones. And each of these three that I'm mentioning, again, I don't have pictures of the play area, but each of them came with the individuals who were inside that had an idea, that had a spark, that wanted to do something better, that wanted to create a better space for where they are currently residing, and also with the recognition that staff who work in those facilities take part in that too. And when there's a safer environment for those who live there, there's a safer environment for those that work there, and there's more healing that occurs, and people go home, for those that are fortunate enough to go home at the end of their workday, in a different state of mind than they would otherwise go. So these things are, I believe, very, very important. And it's part of what you don't necessarily think about, and really recognizing that these are individuals, groups of individuals that invest their time and energy and resources into creating a safer space. Kind of a theme throughout each of the clubs, which are administratively approved organizations within the facilities, is to improve the quality of life for those inside and outside the prison walls. And it comes with the recognition that for the individuals that are residing there, the adults in custody, that's going to be their home for whatever period of time they're there for. And certainly for the lifer community, that's going to be the rest of their existence. Beyond that, there's a responsibility to improve the quality of life for those outside of the prison walls, because there's a recognition that when you are there, you did something to go there, and you're constantly reminded each and every day by whatever that was, because your very environment dictates that. You can't not know that you're there for a reason. And so it's important to kind of recognize that component, and that's part of what pushes these individuals to move in a way that is restorative and reach for these things that may seem impossible. So, this is me in 1998 at 14 years old. Another example of transformation, if you will, and what time does and what growing up and maturing does. On the other side is about 15 years later. And so this is my mugshot. When I was 14 years old, I was arrested here in Oregon for aggravated murder. I was waived to adult court and sentenced to life in prison. and I tremendously negatively impacted my community in so many ways that I certainly didn't recognize then, though I very much knew right from wrong. But I was fortunate to be supported both by family and friends, and ultimately a system that helped give me opportunities to get to where I am today. I received a second look, actually received 2 second looks, but I spent nearly 18 years in 9 different facilities, both youth and adult, both county and state. And actually today is 2 years to the day that I was released from OSP in 2017. So it's good to be here today for many, many reasons. This is a big piece of what shifted me, and it's what I want to leave you with today. In 2011, but part of my story, it's short on time, so I apologize for leaving so much out. And if you have questions, please, by all means, come approach me. I'm happy to chat about anything. But I didn't take responsibility for my actions, for robbing and killing an innocent man when I was 14 years old. I didn't take those kind of responsibilities until over a decade had gone by. And in 2011, I took my first Inside Out class, which was an opportunity to engage with students, many of whom are in this room or similar situated. And it taught me many, many things. It gave me a level of confidence that I hadn't had, and it also empowered me in many ways, and very much shifted my trajectory. And so the professor, it was a sociology class, at the end of the class she said, once you know, you owe. And that, for whatever reason, that just shifted and clicked for me in a very different way. And so what I would ask you and leave you with today is you've heard a lot of different things, you've hopefully been exposed to some different ideas, and I would ask you to have conversations about those with people that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have conversations with. Part of restorative practices and transformative practices, they can sometimes work more easily in smaller communities, because the bigger the community, the more kind of disconnected we often are. And so it's sometimes a lot harder to have conversations that are a little bit deeper and a little more meaningful with people in the larger community. So I would just encourage you, whether you're from a small community or a large community, engage, have a conversation, and what I would ask beyond having that first conversation about whatever it is that you heard here today that just kind of triggers something different for you, is that you follow up after a period of time. So whether that's a week or a month or whatever that is, follow up with the individual. And I'm not asking you to go out and convince anyone. I mean, great, if you want to, by all means, I will certainly provide myself as a resource in any way that I can. But at the end of the day, just have those conversations. We often don't think about these things. And so many people don't know what's possible. So I'll leave you that with the ask that you have those conversations, that in addition to that, you follow up on those conversations. And again, if there's anything you want to ask me, I'm a complete open book, so don't hesitate to ask. Thanks.
Again, thank you all for coming, and take your time. We have the room for a while. Go leave a message for the inside guys, exchange numbers. I have all of your emails if you've registered, so I'll be in touch. Thank you.